Although it's surprisingly progressive in a way, is that there's a lot of butt stuff in the short.
This time we watch Season 4, Episode 22, The Day the Earth Froze.
Where
You're
it turns
basically
out
fans.
Sampo was the friends we met along the way.
Wait a minute. I know that voice. We got a Beth in the house.
We do indeed. Hello. Happy holidays, everybody.
Welcome back.
For new listeners, please check out the back catalog to find out who Beth is. You're missing out.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I'm sure they don't think so.
Thank you for coming aboard. Thank you for coming back. It's super exciting to have you here. Takes a huge weight off my shoulders. How are you doing? How's 2020 treated you?
Oh, it's pandemic horrific. How about that?
I guess you were on in an episode in 2020, but it was so long ago.
I don't. What was it? Pandemic time? It might have been in the before times.
And I think it was before times.
Yes, because we were going to record it in person, and we couldn't because everything was shutting down. We didn't manage to do it in time.
Right. Oh, boy.
Fun times, 2020.
And unlike you two, I am trapped inside with two small children, which has made it...
Boo.
It's very festive, I bet. Are they all excited about the holidays?
One of them is still in an infant void of nothing sort of in her brain, but that makes it easier. Because she also doesn't know about the pandemic, which is quite refreshing.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you can finally stop answering them stupid baby questions.
Oh, I should mention there's a short with this episode called Here Comes the Circus, which is also very kid-friendly.
Kids love the circus.
And yeah, we decided we would do The Day the Earth Froze, a nice wintry episode, as a substitute for a sort of Christmassy holiday-themed episode because, well, it just felt nice. It feels like the year the Earth froze.
And also, you know, there's no such thing as Christmas during pandemic times. Christmas is canceled.
It does not feel like Christmas in this house. Maybe it does if you have kids around.
We just tell them that Santa is quarantining this year so they can't get any presents.
Yeah, they don't make masks big enough to cover that beard.
And what's in your stocking, little Billy? Why, Clorox wipes.
Oh, no. Speaking of the holidays, our good friends, the Maths, did a very special that happened before we got the last episode out because 2020. But it did happen. They did another pass at Santa Claus versus the Devil, a.k.a. Santa Claus, the one that we talked about many, many Christmases ago.
Oh, did you guys get a chance to watch this one? Because I am way behind on my mad stuff. I have Aris and Santa Claus versus the Devil still to watch.
No, sadly, and the only one that I've watched so far is the Ed Wood special of Glenn and Glenda, which I had never seen before. And just to replug it, it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah.
I got a chance to see it. They do a good job with it, as you might imagine. And they kept talking about how they hadn't seen the MST3K episode in, 30 years. And they hadn't watched the Riff Tracks episode. So they had no idea if they were repeating jokes or not. It all seemed pretty fresh to me, and that's always a treat. What a freaking weird movie that is, though, by the way. I do not understand that movie at all. I don't understand the point of it. I don't know what's going on in it. It's a hot mess of a movie. I need to re-listen to our old episode about it, I think.
There's not enough movies and stories in general in which a holiday figure of some kind or a mythical character has to take on the devil.
A devil.
While partnering with Merlin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a random assortment of kids from around the world speaking in their own languages.
Instead of elves, they just have children as labor for the toys.
Very racist nationalist depictions of children.
Generally how it goes.
Including that one boy who's not allowed to wear a shirt because he's from Africa.
I think one of them has a bone in his hair.
Yes, that does happen.
Anyway, they did a good job of it. I don't know if there's any way to catch it if you missed the live version of it. I mean, you could get a download if you weren't able to see it live, but I don't know if you can buy the downloads after the fact. It seems like you should be able to, but I don't know. But they also announced what they're doing next, which is another collection of shorts. So that'll be a nice way to ring in 2021.
Yes, we're going to start on a high note.
The last collection of shorts was really, really good. And I imagine, just like they did a Halloween special when they did that collection, they're going to do a Martin Luther King Day special this time around. It'll be hilarious. All right, well, that's all the news we have today, I think, unless there's something else that I'm forgetting.
They renewed it for season 13. It's back, everybody.
It's not April Fool's. But that would have made a nice Christmas present, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's look back in the past and talk about the day the Earth froze, shall we?
Let's do it.
We have no choice but to do so. This time we watched Season 4, Episode 22, The Day the Earth Froze.
Oh, but first, there's a short. It's Here Comes the Circus. They got some trapeze artists that just kind of hang there, and they've got some clowns that look like they're hobos and Irish cops, and there's Emmett Kelly, who eats, and there's some animal... You know what? Okay, guys, we all know that this is a horrifying thing to watch, but you know what? Entertainment changes over the years. This was the 40s. They didn't have TVs yet, and there wasn't any animal rights. And you know what? In the Victorian era, nothing was funny unless it was being uttered on the back of a horse. So things change, okay? Just let's cut some slack and don't look at the elephants too closely. I'm sure it'll be very sad, okay? Just let's move on.
Now back to our feature presentation. In a prologue, we're reminded of the great tales of Aesop and Hans Christian Andersen. Surely the tale that we're about to witness would be on par with those classics. You know, the unforgettable tale of sorcery, music, and a witch who deprives townsfolk of the sun like a Russo-Finnish Mr. Burns. Yes, it's all that and so much more. We're in the town, city, country, place known as Kalevala, home to the originator of the log driver's waltz, Lemminkainen. Lemminkainen's a woodsman, but you'll be hard-pressed to tell the difference between him and an inanimate log when he's not talking. Elsewhere, a blacksmith named Ilmarinen waits for the perfect moment to create a Sampo for the people of Kalevala. A Sampo, a device that provides gold and grain and God knows what else, can only be created when Ilmarinen's, whatever his name is, sister, Anarchy, is married off. The good news is that Anarchy has the hots for Lemminkainen. It's a match made in blandness. The bad news is that Anarchy is kidnapped by a witch who wants the Sampo for herself and her legion of imps. Her legion of simps. Lemminkainen and Ilmarinen, I'm never going to say that right, and I'm just going to move ahead, head off to rescue Anarchy. Oh boy, time for action. Oh, you're not familiar with Russo-Finnish epics, are you? No, instead, Lemminkainen and the other guy are tasked with doing chores for the old witch, and the audience marvels as they do chores. There's some amusing scenes where Lemminkainen wrestles with a snake puppet, and the surreal sight of a flaming moose boat, but ultimately it's not enough for our old witch. She requires a Sampo, and Ilmarinen obliges. So let's cut to the chase, shall we? Witch gets Sampo, Anarchy and her brother head home, but Lemminkainen tries to steal back the Sampo. He fails. Then the witch steals the sun itself, plunging the world in perpetual darkness. Ilmarinen can neither create another Sampo nor another sun, so the people of Kalevala attack the witch by playing their harps in unison. The witch freezes herself to the entrance of her own door and is destroyed by Lemminkainen. The sun is then freed from the witch's lair and restored to its rightful place in the skies. The end.
Meanwhile, on the satellite of love, it's picture day. Joel is wearing a freshly washed jumpsuit, Gypsy has put on her pearls, and Crow and Tom are full of restless energy as they wait for Joel to set up the exposure and the timer and everything on his camera. And at the last minute, he realizes the light meter is still in the shot. Whoopsie! For the invention exchange, Joel and the bots show off Snaction, a line of treats based on ninja weapons, and Dr. Forrester has taken all of Frank's savings and invested it in Unhappy Meals, boxes filled with toys guaranteed to make kids cry. Somehow they haven't sold. After watching the short, Tom and Crow want to put on their own circus act. Joel types all their ideas down on a typewriter that, wah-wah, turns out to be just a prop. Gotcha! At the halfway mark, it's time for Joel and the bots to try to figure out what a Sampo is. They have some wild ideas, but if you want to know the real answer, well, you've come to the right podcast. Okay, but shut up, everyone. Towards the end of the movie, we are treated to one of the greatest sketches in the show's history, Gypsy's one-bot show, Gypsy Rose Me. It's a real tour de force as she briefly but brilliantly inhabits some characters from all walks of life, from downtrodden women to downtrodden women who ain't going to be downtrodden no more. Rave reviews, 2 thumbs up, way up for this show. And after the movie, Crow and Tom have tied themselves up in hefty bags and chains like the various winds that the evil witch from the movie have captured up. And maybe Adam forgot to mention that part. No loss. We read a letter. And then we go back to the Mads, and now Frank has tied himself up in a bag over protest over Dr. F taking all his money and investing it poorly, and I'm sure the whole bag thing is totally going to convince Dr. F. The end.
It's the day the Earth froze. I have always loved this episode. This was a real fun one to put back on again for for me, it's been a few years.
I also haven't watched it in a while, and I always kind of remembered thinking that there were some good bits to it, but that I kind of found it a bit slow and dry. And yeah, the plot sort of breaks down a lot in the middle of the movie.
Yes.
But it's still a really good episode.
I've always loved it. I mean, can't get better than the Flaming Moose scenario. That was amazing. The Flaming Moose was part of my personal clip show that I assembled on my VHS cassette collection.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about your supercut of MST3K moments.
This was on it. Here Comes the Circus is an amazing short. I really enjoy the discussion about whether or not they should go too dark.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of meta humor about what they're doing was very much appreciated. The movie itself, boy, it is long. It's hard to believe that there's a short attached because it feels like, a 2-hour ordeal to watch it, but it does have its moments.
The edit of the movie they're watching is just over 60 minutes.
That is very hard to believe.
I know.
Yeah, time stops and meaning loses all meaning.
I watched a little bit of it unmisted, and I only watched a little bit of it. I didn't make it to the really slow bits in the middle of the movie, but It seemed like it was faster paced and a better movie when it was without them talking all over all the important dialogue.
It's certainly a prettier movie, as if you watch a remastered copy of this, it's genuinely really striking and to look at.
Yeah, I wasn't even watching a remastered copy. Somebody has uploaded a non-remastered copy onto YouTube, let's say. And it's widescreen, which helps, but it is definitely a pretty movie. I have seen bits of the remastered version that came out about 6 years ago, and it does look much prettier.
Another thing, I guess, to mention here is I think the sketches are real winners here in this particular episode. I'm a big fan of just about all of them. I'm particularly fond of Crow and Servo trying to come up with their own circus. If just for that closing line from Joel, it's like, and there's a bit of the clown in all of us.
Yeah, Joel obviously has a bit of a circus fetish, but yeah, and I mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. Gypsy Rose Lee is absolute top 5 sketches for me. I just love it to pieces, and I didn't know it was going to be in this episode. So when that sketch started up, I basically screamed.
I did appreciate, again, this is a real Joel episode moment. I feel like when she takes off her first outfit to reveal the dazzling, what looks like a sweater vest underneath, and he gasps like all the men do when Jessica Rabbit comes out for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. No, part of that is just that Joel and the bots in the audience are just so quietly appreciative, and that whole bit of I saw her in something else, and then she stops them from hey, am I interrupting your conversation or whatever the line is. Yeah. It all plays out so well. Oh, love it. Love it.
Not to mention, this is also the home of, if you know what a Sampo is, write it down on a piece of paper and throw it away. You'll be glad you did.
So, this is interesting. The last couple episodes of this show, I've been having to do a lot of reading. A few episodes ago, I read a gay robot porn novel from the 70s that turned out to be quite misogynist and weird. And then for the last episode, I think it was, I read a pulp novel from the mid-centuries about a desperately boring guy whose life is turned around when some maniac hot teen shows up, and it's really pulpy and weird. And now I'm reading the Finnish national epic. Bit of whiplash here in terms of the prestige of what I'm reading.
Yet, oddly enough, all the same author.
Exactly. Oh, boy. The Kalevala is the source of today's movie. And have either of you read the Kalevala?
No.
It never came up.
I had never read it either, although, it's vaguely on my list of things I want to check out someday. What I didn't realize was sort of where the Kalevala comes from, I guess. Do you know anything about this story, about how this Finnish epic came to be?
See, from what I understood of Finland, when I was a kid, I found out that basically all of my favorite movies were banned in Finland. So I cannot stand with fascist Finland. I did not even choose to give it a chance.
So my best friend is of Finnish background, and from what I can tell, their national epic is saunas.
Yes, saunas are a big deal, and in fact come up in the Kalevala.
Of course they do. Okay.
Yeah, so unlike a lot of other things that we think about as like big epic poems, like, on my literary podcast, we just did an episode about the Mahabharata, which is the big ancient epic poem of India, or something like the Iliad, right? The Kalevala is from the 19th century.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Of course it is.
Yeah. Well, why do you say of course it is?
Because the 19th century was a time of increasing nationalism, and so there was a kind of looking back at a nation's own history and kind of reconstructing a folklore, especially if one didn't already exist, in order to create like this sense of like deep history with the land, which was completely constructed. The English did it, the Germans did it, of course the Finns did it.
Yep, this is exactly that. So a guy named Elias Lönnrot, who we see briefly in the beginning of the film being compared to Aesop and What's His Toes.
The mud creature that comes alive?
Yeah, the statue type thing that comes alive.
A very Hot Fuzz moment.
He's a real person. He's given the wrong name in the titles and in the English narration. He's called Elias Lönnrot, which is, let's say, close. He was a physician, and he decided to travel around in sort of the backwoods of Finland. I don't know if that's a fair way to put it, but, he traveled around collecting songs and myths and poems and so forth that were being passed down orally.
From the small folk, right?
From the everyday folk, from a handful of everyday folk. And as he was collecting them, he sort of realized, oh, wait, a lot of these are about the same characters. A lot of these probably connect up to each other. And then he sort of wove them into the work that we have now, along with a few other poems that are not as well known about the same set of myths. And it's really interesting. I don't know. I read a bit of it. I did not manage to read all of it. But if the translation that I was reading, which I'll link to in the show notes, is any indication, it's got a really interesting voice, let's say. There's a lot of sort of poetic reduplication of saying the same thing and then kind of saying it again in a slightly different way. And it has a really interesting effect, and the translator didn't shy away from including that. All I will say is that it was a nice read, but I did not read all of it, in part because I went looking for the stuff that led to this movie, and it's sort of there. It's all been changed quite a bit, which, you're sort of allowed to do with myths and legends and so forth. But one of our main characters doesn't exist in the book itself. And I bet you've probably been figure out which one.
Lemminkainen.
Lemminkainen.
No, he's there.
Really? But he doesn't do anything except chop down trees.
I know, and even some of the stuff that he does in the movie isn't stuff that he does in the book.
Mm.
A lot of this is actually based on another guy who doesn't appear in the movie, but who is basically the first human.
Oh.
No, Annika. Annika's not in it at all.
All right. Because who needs women?
There's some other woman who the other guy tries to marry, but she's actually like living in the land where that witch lives. And Ilmarinen has no sister, unless I'm missing something, but I looked all around and I couldn't find anything in the book.
Well, it makes sense, I guess, because her device makes sense for a movie, but less for a national epic. Like, you're not going on an adventure to rescue the princess in a national epic. You're just trying to tell the story of how a nation was built. So yeah, in retrospect, that makes total sense that she is just the added thing for a cinema piece.
Yeah, although I just find it weird that, this is a film that Finland was heavily invested in, right? This is an important film for them that they were making, with the help of the Soviets in the late 50s. And, it's representing their national epic. And yet they've switched it up quite significantly. They've changed stories to involve different people, and they've added a whole new character as a kind of pretty love interest. And I think that's weird. I mean, again, it's myth, so you're allowed to do that sort of thing. But I find it weird how much they were willing to mess with their own short-lived tradition.
They didn't have the word reboot back then, but they were really thinking about it.
I think that's a pretty good way of putting it, actually.
Well, I just feel like, just generally, like, women's roles tend to be a little bit more custodial. Like, they're there to help along a plot. So maybe people weren't too upset that change had happened if it helped string along various stories into more of a singular plot.
That's true. Though you also had the other woman in the movie.
The unnamed witch.
Well, her name's Lohi, but yes.
Oh, right, yes. Her name's... yeah.
And there's also Lemmy's mom.
There's also Lemmy's mom, who is in the book.
Yeah, she seemed like she must have been straight from the book, because she talks to birch trees, and I'm just like, this has to be from the original.
That part in particular struck me, like that sequence where she goes around and she asks the birch tree, and she asks the road where her son is. Like, that seemed like it was straight from that kind of ballad, where it has that kind of iterative structure, And I went to the birch tree and I said, birch tree, oh birch tree, where is my son? I've looked a long time, and blah, blah, blah. I could picture what that sounds like. It did not work in film, as far as I could tell, because it was incredibly boring, and you didn't have that kind of parallelism that you have with a song with verses. But, you could see some of perhaps what the original material was, although I don't know whether that's actually what the origin of that sequence is. Anyway, the Kalevala. It's pretty good. It was pretty readable, but I didn't have time to read much of it. But I liked it. Go check it out of your local library. Thank you, Finland, for giving us this lovely epic.
3 out of 5 stars.
So, because I haven't been here for a while, I thought I would introduce a topic that is very typical of me, I think. A historical overview of Finno-Soviet relations.
Historic Corner.
Just in time for Christmas.
All right, so I thought, since I haven't been here for a while, I might as well put my academic cap on and show how well I can read Wikipedia. So I just thought this movie was kind of weird. Like, why do we have a pairing between Finland and the Soviet Union? Because the last time I'd heard about it, they were not on the same side. I don't know if you've heard of the Winter War.
Yeah, that was nasty.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, that was like the World War II invasion of Finland by the Soviets, in which the Finns did some real nasty things to these invaders, which they deserved, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, you might even know more about it than me, but basically, like, you had this kind of classic structure where the underdog was willing to use, like, some pretty ingenious tactics to fight against this bigger army that was kind of stuck in its own sense of superiority and power.
Yeah.
So, for instance, like, the Russian troops would stay on the roads, and the Finns would stick in the forest and just sniper them off from there. And, of course, there's the national hero Simo Haya, I think his name is, who is also known as the White Death for picking off so many Russian soldiers.
Wow.
They did end up losing the war. I think there was a continuation war after that, and they had to cede a bunch of territory. But I think there was, let me see if I got the Russian. Here it goes. I don't know if this is true or not, but this website I found that is totally legit, I am sure, says that a Russian general later remarked that the land that they had conquered was just enough to bury their dead.
This website being timecube.com.
Yeah, and we should mention, like, Finland's one of those places where, like, it was constantly being conquered by bigger powers. And for that reason, it has this interesting relationship between the East and West in the 20th century. Like, sometimes it was Russian and sometimes it was Swedish, depending on who was conquering whom. So at this point, they were trying to keep their independence against the Soviet Union, to the point where they were even on Nazi Germany's side for a while, because they were so afraid of losing their independence to the Soviets. But by the time this film was made, apparently they were happy enough that they were joining forces to make a film about Finland's national history. The writer's a Finn or something. The producer's of Finnish descent, but most of the actors are from the Soviet Union. A lot of the crew is Finnish. Like, it's a real mix. And so it's just like, what happened to the point where in basically like 20 years that they were big buds? They were not how you say big buds, from what I can tell. basically Finland adopted this strategy after the Second World War where they realized, like, we're not going to get any help from the West against the Soviet Union. So they adopted what the West has called Finlandization, where basically they kept their independence, but they ceded a lot of power and influence to the Soviet Union, to the point where in the late 50s, there was an election and the Soviets didn't like the results, so they just had another election.
Yeah.
But it worked. I mean, unlike a lot of countries like Latvia or Estonia, they did manage to maintain their independence. But to this day, they've been very good at, like, towing that line. Like, they're still essentially part of the West. Like, they're part of the European Union. They use the euro there, but they still have good relationships with Putin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they found a way to, like, kind of tread that line. And I think this movie, I'm guessing this is a way to show what kind of movies that they could make and hopefully get it exported to places like the US, because it's essentially a Finnish movie and not a Russian one, but still showing them what kind of movies Soviet cinema could actually make. So it was a good way to get it through the back door in a strange way. But I've always really admired pragmatic diplomacy, so I actually think this is pretty cool that the Finns were able to tread this line between the East and West for so long.
Yeah, I mean, a little country's got to do what a little country's got to do, right?
This feels oddly familiar as a Canadian.
Right.
Well, where's our Canadian national epic? I mean, where's our great story involving a witch stealing the sun?
It's called Wakusta, and it is horrible.
Oh, I just assumed it was the raccoons.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 stocking stuffers about today's episode, The Day the Earth Froze. Go, one of you, go!
The Day the Earth Froze is the first of a trilogy of films riffed on MST3K that were directed by Alexander Ptushko. Yes, The Sword and the Dragon, The Magic Voyage of Sinbad, and this movie all came from the same wonderful brain, who gave us a bunch of wintry episodes that we can do for the holidays. Happy Ptushkamas!
We'll have an in-depth Ptushko segment someday, but for now, he was known as the Soviet Walt Disney, although he was more into stop animation. In particular, he made 1933's The New Gulliver, a communist retelling of Gulliver's travels with a mix of live action and stop animation. It's pretty amazing to look at. Link in the show notes.
Every scene in The Day the Earth Froze was filmed 4 times. Twice in Finnish and twice in Russian. And, for each language, 2 versions in 2 different aspect ratios, filmed with 2 different cameras.
And then, of course, the US version of the film ended up with a very different edit, cutting out about 24 minutes, including parts of a sequence that explains how Lemminkainen died and was then brought back to life by the gods after his mom asked them very, very nicely.
And the US version of the credits are heavily altered to obscure the names of prominent Soviet cast and crew. The director, Alexander Ptushko, is renamed Greg Sibelius. Andris Vlasic, who plays Lemminkainen, is listed as John Powers. Eve Kivi, who plays his love Aniki, is listed as Nina Anderson.
Craig Sibelius, Ptushko's Americanized name, is clearly a nod to Jean Sibelius, Finland's most famous composer, who would have died shortly before the film was made. Sibelius was a big deal even outside Finland, as he wrote many orchestral tone poems based on the Kalevala.
John Powers / Andris Vlasic never made another movie after playing Lemminkainen. After finishing the film, he obtained his qualifications as a wood engineer / technologist and worked for a number of furniture and woodworking companies until his death in 2004. Link all about it in the show notes, but fair warning, it's in Latvian.
Eve Kivi, on the other hand, was a prolific Soviet actress. Her IMDb bio calls her the, quote, legendary leading blonde sex kitten of Estonian cinema who clawed her way up the Soviet cinema ladder with legendary determination. That's a lot of legendaries.
Some fun tidbits from Eve Kivi's IMDb bio. Popular legends tell us about her whining and dining her way upwards from producer to producer and handcuffing herself to the door of a major Soviet studio executive. Oh, and she has always been very open about her sex life, willingly discussing the matter in her interviews, hosting TV programs about sex, and naming male semen as the best skin care product. Her eternal youth is legendary, as it seems she has stopped aging sometime around 40. And she sounds fun.
Despite our dimmed appreciation for Frank Zappa these days, the boys at MST3K still love him. And there's a fun moment when Crow sings Zappa's Don't Eat the Yellow Snow near the film's climax. Here, let's enjoy.
Watch out where the huskies go and don't you eat that yellow snow.
As Ilmarinen hammers away while he forges the Sampo, Crow keeps joking about Mark 7.
Mark 7. Mark 7. Mark 7, damn it. Oh, Mark 7. Whew.
Mark 7 Limited was a production company run by Jack Webb, you know, Joe Friday in Dragnet. And they produced such television fare as, well, Dragnet, but also Adam 12, Heck Ramsey, and Project UFO. Well, they produced Dragnet at least. Anyway, the iconic logo shown at the end of a Mark 7 production had a guy hammering a stamp, which left a Roman numeral indentation. If you don't know what I mean, well, link in the show notes.
Upon the creation of the reddish horse, Crow quips,
The TriStar logo's ready.
TriStar Pictures was a film production company created as a joint division of Columbia Pictures, HBO, and CBS. They produced such films as The Natural, Peggy Sue Got Married, and most importantly, Fred Decker's Night of the Creeps. TriStar's memorable logo was of a white horse suddenly sprouting a pair of Pegasus wings and flying off the screen. We'll have a link to the original logo animation in our show notes.
When the sun is taken away, Joel announces,
The Christmas that almost wasn't.
and sure enough, they'd riff that very film as the Christmas special of MST3K's 11th season. And yeah, we'll get to that episode someday. Someday.
And that's time. Sorry.
That would be time calling.
Number one, my parents still have a landline. Number two, they're boomers, so it's constantly ringing.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Beth. You've made your feelings a bit known, but let's actually talk about circuses and clowns for a bit.
Okay. I went to a circus when I was like 6, and they had a ride where you could go on the back of an elephant. So I did it, and my mom wouldn't go near me because I smelled like an elephant afterwards.
Ugh.
And that's why you never saw your mom ever again.
That was the first time when she kind of withdrew her affection from me.
Wow. Now, I've got an important scientific question, if I may. Elephants, do they smell worse than horses?
Oh God, they smell so bad.
I think they
Ugh.
smell more than horses is the important thing. I seem to recall that it's kind of the same smell, but a lot of it.
Yeah, but it was fun to ride.
Good. I'm glad it was worth giving up your mother's love for.
I'm sure the elephant loved it too.
I'm sure.
Yes.
Circuses, famously good to animals, especially back then.
Mm-hmm. All very happy there. That's why they're in the circus. They know they're in the big top.
Were there a lot of circuses and clowns in Newfoundland?
No. I mean, every now and then a circus would come, but the only thing I really saw was getting drunk and going to see Cirque du Soleil as an adult. And I suppose the clowns and general spectacle of ancient 80s, early 90s McDonald's must count.
What?
As a bit of a circus.
It's true. Ronald McDonald was the one clown that I never felt weird around.
See, he's a soothing presence.
Huh. Did he smell like an elephant?
I don't know why, because I'm generally very unsettled by clowns, but Ronald McDonald just seemed like an uncle.
Anyone who's teamed up with Grimace can't be a bad guy.
That's true. I do trust Grimace with my life.
Yeah. I just want them roller skates.
Now, the idea that people are scared of clowns is really prevalent in our world these days. And it feels like it wasn't always that way. I don't know, maybe it was, but if you watch these shorts, kids are excited about clowns.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to get too into it, but I mean, clowns have always been part of so many cultures because you always need the fool, right? So you have clowns, you have tricksters, you have harlequins. They've always been an important part of any culture because you need somebody who kind of can fool everybody, the tops and the bottoms, And
I think we saw a little bit of that in today's short, yes.
yes. But it wasn't until the 50s with TV that clowns became something that was specifically targeted to children. And I think that's where the weirdness starts coming in because they were originally supposed to be this kind of otherworldly, antisocial, not evil, but like kind of separate from society's laws figures. And then they got shifted to children, and it worked for a while, but then those children grew up, and I think something happened there.
Huh.
I don't find like clowns in the wild to be all that frightening, but a sudden cut to a clown, as we see with this short, can be quite unnerving.
Okay, so one of the clowns that they cut to suddenly a few times is Emmett Kelly, who was a real big deal clown when this short was made. Probably the most famous clown.
What a backhanded thing. It's the world's most famous clown.
I know.
But he was probably the last clown that was targeted to adults. Because after this, when TV comes in, you have Bozo the Clown, which was one of the major, like, first children's programming.
Yeah, and I didn't know too much about Emmett Kelly. I mean, I knew the name, but I didn't really know anything about him. I don't know if either of you do.
No, I'm not a source for clown information, I'm afraid. I'm not a good database of clowning.
Chris, I feel like you must have known a few people who went to clown school.
I do in fact know somebody, but well, I'll get to that in a second.
Nailed it.
But because I decided to search YouTube for a bit of Emmett Kelly knowledge, and I came across when he appeared on the 50s game show What's My Line, which I assume you've all seen some little clips of. What's My Line? Fantastic show in small doses these days anyways, especially when they have an interesting guest on. And it's 4 sort of quasi-celebrity panelists who are asking yes/no questions to figure out what the job or who the person is who's there. And it's not usually a celebrity, but sometimes it is. And then they have to wear blindfolds like they did this time. I watched that, and it was fantastic. Emmett Kelly was cracking me up by doing not much at all, which I was not expecting to have happen. I did not go into this thinking, Emmett Kelly, brilliant comedic genius. And I walked away thinking, wait, maybe he is, and he's just really badly directed, so to speak, or edited around in this. Because, you know, notoriously, Emmett Kelly just eats in this film.
Yeah, that's all he does.
Well, it does seem like his shtick is kind of a Buster Keaton live action thing, right?
So there's a little bit of that, but what his shtick is really is that he's incredibly sad looking.
Okay.
He's got this like sad face and permanently sad smile, and he does some physical work. Like he has a really famous routine where he's like brushing on the floor with a broom, and he's brushing a spotlight away, and he does some interaction with it, and it's very cute and it's fine. But like what really impressed me in the What's My Line appearance is that he's just intensely sad for no reason, and he keeps at it while everybody's laughing and everybody's doing all sorts of stuff around it, and he's able to respond to everything by just being like pitiful. It is so funny.
But doctor, I am Emmett Kelly.
Exactly. I was really blown away by it. Apparently he'd done all sorts of other work as well, comedy writing and acting and so forth. But man, now I want to see more Emmett Kelly stuff to see if it holds up to that one clip, because it's good. Think about the person who like goes on to Letterman or whatever the equivalent of Letterman is these days. I don't know. And is just intensely sad looking. And doesn't say anything because he's not allowed to talk. He just looks sad during a Letterman interview for 5 minutes. That would be pretty funny if you could pull it off, and he could pull it off.
Sounds like we need Paul Giamatti to get strep throat, and it'll be perfect.
There you go. There you go. Yes, of course, as you mentioned, I do know people who went to clown school and got clown training and have all sorts of interesting things to say about sort of the theory behind clowning and the way that it's meant to express outsized emotions, right? It's a way of amplifying things, of being really big about feelings and trying to connect to people in that way. And there's a sense in which there's this whole mode of clowning that has almost nothing to do with sort of making balloon animals and that particular slice of clownery, that it is just about bigness and the fool and all that stuff. And I wonder if that's also a reason why the clown is a really good figure for horror, because that's also like big emotion time, big scary time as well. Like if you want to be big and sad, you can also be big and scary.
That leads me to ask, if anybody here has seen, Tim Curry's decidedly comedic, but that's why it is frightening performance in It.
No, I've just seen stills of it.
He was It?
Yeah, he's It. He's the original It.
What? That is so good.
Yeah. Who did you think it was?
He's so menacing.
Yeah. That's Tim Curry for you. I mean, that all you need is a hammy actor, and you got yourself a scary clown.
Sadly, I've not seen any of the It's. Would you recommend them?
If you're okay with something, the individual pieces being better than the sum of its parts, if you're okay with a viewing like that, then it is totally worth seeing, largely for the performance of Tim Curry and the Tim Curry sequences, which also features some neat stop motion.
Okay, so you're suggesting the original It, not the remake.
Yeah, the original It. I haven't seen the remake because, like I said, it looked like an Animaniac, and that does not to frighten me. All right. So, who has Picture Day stories?
I do.
All right, because I have not been part of a Picture Day in a long time, and Chris, I assume the same is true for you?
No, Oh, shit. Are we going to introduce this? Is this the segment, or are we going to?
This is the segment.
Indeed.
Okay.
Adam's introduced it.
No, I did it when I was a kid a few times, and no, you know what? I take that back. After we adopted a cat, we did not really a formal picture day, but I did sort of try to set us up one Christmas in front of the Christmas tree with the cat in my arms and a nice family photo that we could share with people. So, I have had one sort of like that a little bit recently, though cameras are much better than they were when Joel was trying to take a photo of the family on the Satellite of Love, and you don't need to fuss with nearly as much fiddly camera wonk stuff.
Okay, so that leaves you, Beth. You have all the family stories.
I have children.
Yeah, you have obligations.
Children and professional photography go hand in hand. And it's a weird thing for me because I just find family photos to be inherently creepy. And I don't like to have them in display, like in public areas of the house. It's just, I don't know. I feel weird about it. But at the same time, I now as a parent see why you want to capture these moments because they do, like, you look at them and they're different, So you just feel this need to capture a moment in time before they shift into something else again, like the crazy little changelings they are. And recently, we decided to try to get a family photo in spite of the pandemic. We found a photographer who was willing to do outside shots, and it was probably one of the most stressful things I've ever done is trying to corral a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old into some kind of workable family picture. Because a 6-year-old, how would I describe the 6-year-old?
Well, was she more of a crow or more of the tom?
Or more of a gypsy, just careening into things.
I'm assuming you're the gypsy in this, but I could be wrong.
I would say she'd be more the gypsy in that she thinks it's a one-woman show.
Oh,
and
gypsy.
Every point is an opportunity to ham it up. And so she's always pulling faces and mugging and trying to be funny when the rest of us are trying to be serious. And the 1-year-old hasn't a clue what's going on. All she knows is that people are forcing her to do things and she doesn't like it and she's trying to get away. We're just like, hey, let's try to get a picture of the two girls together. And the older one's trying to get a hug. The other one's like, no! And just any picture we have of the younger one is just like a moment of fear and escape. And it was just corralling cats the whole time. And it is a minor miracle that we even got one workable picture out of it. Family photo day.
Fun for the whole family.
Is there a lot of pressure from other, extended family members for you to do this so they can get the card?
Yeah, I think that was part of it too, is that family photos become kind of like a communal commodity, and especially during a pandemic, because they're not going to be able to see these children. I think I could never understand why, grandmothers or people of that age seem to worship children, but I think it's because they just realize how short that time is in a way that even I haven't quite grasped yet. You blink and they're not children anymore. So they're just like, I want to see pictures before they are teenagers and won't talk to me anymore. That's, I think, a lot of it that's pushing that kind of family photo urge. So yeah, there's this need to kind of do it for a whole extended family.
Now, I was, #blessed enough to get a copy of your Christmas card photo, and it was very nice. And
Adam, if you want one, just send me your address.
Done and done.
And it was very sweet to get, and I was very happy to get it and all that. But I also got to see some of the outtake photos, which you posted to the socials. And there's this weird thing where, in a sense, the outtake photos show the family dynamic more than the professional photos do. where you're all looking very nice. In the outtake photos, you can see that your oldest is hamming it up and that your youngest has no idea what's going on. And that feels like a more accurate representation of what's going on at that moment in your lives. Is that something that you think about when you look at those photos?
Definitely. And that's actually why we decided to pay for some of the outtakes, just because for us personally, that's the ones that I would look back at with more affection than the posed ones.
But grandma don't want to see that.
Yeah, mostly for other people. Just yeah, that's her. That's definitely her at 6. There's just no other way of capturing that than her ruining a picture deliberately,
I mean, the other thing is that now, at least, they're digital photographs, and you can take 3,000 and pick the 2 best ones, as opposed to, you get maybe 3 shots back when I was a kid. And if they were terrible, well, that's what you're sending out to everybody.
It's funny. You can still get a feel for that for school photos because
that's true.
You only get maybe 3 shots that the photographer's willing to send to you, and they're like, "Oh, these are all bad." I don't know, and the only way I can really zhuzh it up is to decide on which background to throw into it. Just well, and unfortunately, they don't have the laser option anymore. So
what? That was the best one.
I know.
When I graduated high school, the quick photo that they took after the ceremony or whatever apparently was so bad they didn't actually bother sending me a copy to see if I wanted it.
It's you don't want to see this.
I got the envelope that it was supposed to be in and it was empty. I was like, that's fine. I didn't want it anyways. But wow, I must have blinked and made a stupid face, something awful.
But the real question is, how did your mother react when she saw that there was going to be no picture at all?
I think at that point she'd gotten used to the fact that during my teenage years I wanted no photos taken of me. Also, it does change when you're between being 6 and 18, right?
True.
So
it's you're not cute anymore. I don't want any pictures of you anyway.
Exactly. Ugh, just leave the house.
Yeah, that's how grandmas feel.
For the longest time, I had an aunt who had a picture of me prominently located in her hallway of me wearing knee socks and a cute little sweater and nothing else, reading a book from the back.
Huh.
Were you role-playing as Anne Margaret in Bye Bye Birdie?
So just I guess my cute little bum just out there for the world to see.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Scandalous.
Yes. And it was framed on a wall. And I grew up seeing that every time we visited.
Wow.
That just got more and more awkward with each passing year, didn't it?
And there's nothing I can say because she innocently thinks this is the sweetest thing ever. Look at this little 2-year-old without pants on reading a book, I mean, as a teenager, it was crushing to see this. This is the weird thing about family photos is the ones that you choose are kind of for somebody else, and in a strange way that is a little diminishing. So I always try to keep that in mind. Are my kids going to be embarrassed by what I'm putting out there? And so far, I think I've been fairly good about towing that line.
Well, I think we've said everything that we can say about the day the Earth froze, and we've each acquired a lovely new Sampo for Christmas. But Chris, do you have, by any chance, one last final factoid for us?
I do, or at least I remembered something fun. At one point early on, Crow does an impression of somebody who, I wonder if we're going to forget about him quickly, but does an impression of Ross Perot.
Now, here's the deal. Just 4 years. Christmas present coming.
And now I want to look back and think once again about Ross Perot. He was a businessman who did not have a conventional background in politics, who ran for president and didn't win. And boy, that seems like a good thing in retrospect.
He was running with the Clinton-Bush ticket, right?
Yeah, he was running in the same election as that, yes.
Yeah. No, I do remember all the jokes from back then. That was just when I was starting to watch late night television for the first time, and boy, did they love Ross Perot.
That was the thing, is that every sitcom that needed a stock joke about someone behaving crazy, it would be what are you, Ross Perot?
Well, he had a lot of personality, but he also acted weird in the election, in the 92 election. He was winning the polls in a 3-way race, and then left the race for a while, and then a few months later re-entered it. Like, he left the race in July and then re-entered in October. And, like, what? Why would you do that?
I don't know. Did he ever offer an explanation?
I don't remember one. Also, another weird thing about Ross Perot, his name's not Ross. I mean, yeah, it was H. Ross Perot, and so his H stands for Henry. But
I was hoping Herbert.
But he was born Henry Ray Perot.
Oh, I thought he was Henry David Perot.
Either way, like, where does the Ross part come from? He changed it to honor his father, who died when he was about 25. But that's weird, too.
You made it sound like it was weird.
Yeah, it's not that weird.
That is weird. Your father dies, and then you take his middle name as your main name?
Well, middle names were such weird territory anyway.
Yeah.
My middle name is Marie.
Why is it Marie? Was there ever an explanation?
My mother's middle name is Marie.
Oh, okay.
My mother's middle name was also Marie.
Oh my God.
Adam, what's your excuse?
I just enjoyed the McCain Deep and Delicious McCain Marie Antoinette ad, so that's why I have the middle name Marie.
If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you're not satisfied and want to know even more about what a Sampo is, or really if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you. For as little as $1 an episode, you can help us research and record this show and listen to all our superfan bonus bits and hang out with us on our private Slack and all sorts of good things. You can find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And of course, if you want to follow up on anything that we mentioned today, you'll find a whole bunch of links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/85. You know, in the beginning of the movie, the narrator explains pretty clearly what a Sampo is, and they just talk all over that part. It kind of drove me a little crazy this time, but there you go. Anyway, I'm done talking about this one. It's holiday time. I'm ready to sit back and relax and just soak up the presents and the alcohol, and I don't know if there's going to be any of either of that this year because it's not really feeling Christmassy. But 2021 is a-coming. How are we going to break in the new year?
Well, there's one tradition that can't be stopped by any global pandemic or any other tragedy. No. It's Gamuary. It's happening. And we are going to continue with KTMA episode something.
7.
You heard it here first. Gamera versus Zegra.
Which is still not the good one.
Oh.
So, Beth, are you still sticking with us? Come on.
Oh, I'm so glad I'm not going to be here for this one.
Oh, man.
Oh.
Sorry, guys. I've had enough Gamuaries for my lifetime.
No, there will be more.
Yeah.
Ever more Gamuaries.
There's going to be at least 2 more. Oh, God.
Oh, man. All right, we can do this. The Gamera's full of turtle meat. We believe in you, Gamera.
Well, Beth, when will you be joining us full time again?
When you do Attack of the Eye Creatures. No, I'm just kidding. I hate that one.
Meow. Weird attack on the eye creatures out of nowhere.
I'll be back again when the North Wind is released from its cage.
Okay, well, until then.
For you and yours, be sure to get your kids a Sampo this year.
And remember, people, the clown nose is because it's a drunk bum.
I have a good mind taken to my head to start off singing, begin reciting, reeling off a tale of kin and singing a tale of kind. And it goes on from there. That's the Kalevala, everybody. We've been It's Just a Show. Good night. Take it away, Theme Squad.